Hello, my name is Felicia Chardy Torres, and in this video, I'm going to talk about the 5 domains of language processing and their effects on students' reading development. The 5 domains of language processing are essential components that contribute to students' reading development. Each domain plays a unique role in how students understand, decode, and make meaning from text. Here are the 5 domains. The first one is phonology, then we have morphology, semantics, syntax, and then, of course, pragmatics. So, research by neuroscientists, speech pathologists, and educators has shown that the 5 language processing domains are interrelated in reading development. As a result, a deficit in one domain may contribute to reading difficulties in children. Phonology is the sound system of language and the rules for combining those sounds. So it basically just talks about how speech sounds are organized and used. An example for a child who probably could be in pre-K up to first grade, one example would be like recognizing that changing the b in bat to k makes cat. And by doing this, they're practicing onsets and rhyme. So the onset is the consonant or the consonant cluster within a syllable that comes before the vowel. The rhyme is the part of the syllable that contains the vowel and all the remaining consonants after it. So if the child can't segment those words, it can become a challenge. And that's when we have to look at here that the reading challenge would become a phonological reading challenge, and that's difficulty decoding and segmenting the sounds. Each school district should have some kind of teacher toolbox where you have a list of interventions or an intervention library where you can go find research-based interventions for students who are struggling with language processing. In this case, we would look for a tool that fixes or helps students with decoding and segmenting the sounds. We've identified the reading challenge, so now we have to think of what intervention we will use. And in this case, I picked Florida Center for Reading Research. In this activity called Sound Detective, the kids are having fun and they are getting their intervention at the same time. Students match the rhymes while playing a detective game. The students will segment, blend, and match onsets and rhymes in words. Now we're going to take a look at the next domain, morphology. Morphology is the study of the structure of words and understanding word parts. So the focus is prefix, suffix, root words, and grammatical markers. For example, understanding that putting ed at the end of the word is past tense. For example, jump, jumped. Or putting un in front of a word, unhealthy, unhappy, is not happy, not healthy. So if there is a difficulty decoding multisyllabic words or poor vocabulary growth, then a child will need interventions that support morphology. Because without morphology, they can't infer meanings of unfamiliar words, word parts, and they have weak spelling skills. So morphology helps with understanding consistent spelling patterns across word families. So it's important that they know how to break down these multisyllabic words so that can become an intervention. So when you do this intervention, the best way is explicit instruction on common prefixes, suffixes, and roots, word sort games, word detectives, or like building words, anything along those lines is a great intervention. So again, I went to my teacher toolbox, and in there I found again an activity from Florida Center for Reading Research. And I like this activity that helps build vocabulary. It's called Build a Word. Yes, the title is as simple as that. In this activity, students will work with affixes, and students add affixes to make words and use new words in sentences. The students will identify the meaning of the words with affixes, and then at the same time, students add affixes to make words and use new words in the sentences. Now we're going to take a look at syntax. So syntax are the rules that govern sentences, sentence structure, and word order. This is where students are learning how words combine to form phrases and sentences, and they start putting them together. One example would be knowing what order the words go in, knowing that she is running is correct, but running is she is not correct unless you're making a Star Wars movie and you're Yoda or something like that. But the proper order is important, and proper order of sentence depends on the sentence type, but most commonly structures we think about is subject, verb, object. And to build that sentence, we have to start by identifying its core components, such as like knowing the subject, the verb, and objects or those modifiers in the order that they go in. And children need that at a particular stage to make sure that they understand the language. And if there's an issue with the language processing, they might say things backwards, which I am commonly known for. Sometimes I do this. And I have to sometimes go back myself to those, okay, am I saying it correctly? Especially for students who are English language learners, because um, their rules don't apply to the English language. So the basic English language does subject, verb, object. So now, if a student is having trouble understanding complex sentence structure, then we have to look at interventions like build a sentence. And that is the one that I chose from Florida Center for Reading Research. Again, the student will produce meaningful sentences. And during this time, we talk about the who words, the action words, the what words. It's basically, again, going over the subject verb object agreement. And from Florida Center for Reading Research is just build a sentence. And all it is little parts, little different shapes of paper, and they cut them apart and they put now we're going to look at the domain semantics. So now we've covered that we can hear the sounds, make words, understand the words, build the sentences. So now we have to talk about what do those sentences mean? And the meaning of the words in sentences is the comprehension part, and that's semantics. So the vocabulary, word relationship, and conceptual knowledge is all part of semantics. An example would be like understanding that cold and freezing are related in meaning. They're opposites, right? So if a child is struggling with vocabulary knowledge, this is where interventions can take place. Their limited understanding of word meanings and definitions, difficult learning new words, confused about certain words. This is where we could help with interventions. Effective interventions should focus on building vocabulary, understanding word relationships, and develop comprehension strategies. Once they understand the words, then they can formulate the sentences and they can help build the vocabulary and the comprehension side. Here is semantics map that you can use. This graphic organizer helps them target the vocabulary. So they take the target topic or the keyword and they put it in the center of the map and then write categories or questions in the boxes closest to the center box. Or they start to define the words in that concept map. And then they can build their own dictionary using these concept maps and keep them all as a little mini dictionary for themselves. Here's another one called Oh My Word. This is where students continue to build word comprehension and vocabulary comprehension. The students will produce the meaning of the word, and then again they can take these little slits of paper where they have the meaning of the word, they use it in a sentence, other words that have the same meaning, and they cut them in three, like as you see there's like three little boxes. They cut those boxes up and put them into little mini booklets, and they can keep the booklet and review their terms to build that vocabulary. And lastly is pragmatics. It's a little bit of a weakness of mine. I really don't help a lot of students with this, which I think is important. There's just not a lot of time for it. And it's the use of language in social contexts, understanding the rules of convention, tone, body language, and appropriateness. And kids, might struggle with this. And that's where we have to help them with interventions as well. Shoot, I think there's adults who struggle with this, and I think as a nation, as Americans, we struggle with this. So this is a good intervention for lots to think of, for lots of people to think of. Pragmatics is the study of how context influences the interpretation of meaning. It deals with what the speakers mean rather than just the words themselves and what they say, understanding how a character feels. An example would be that a character in a book lost her dog, so we can infer she's sad, but a child might not be able to recognize that. Or on the social pragmatic, knowing to say, oh, sorry for your loss. I'm sorry you lost your dog, knowing to say sorry. Empathizing with someone. Or if a child is walking down the hallway and starts bumping into people in the hallway, they don't seem to have any propriospatial awareness. I mean, it's not a standard medical or psychological term, but the propriospatial awareness is proprioception and spatial awareness, and they don't know how to say excuse me, just a common term. And those not catching those cues when in those comprehension cues in either reading or in their own environment. Interventions to help address this would be practicing those conversations, work on those social stories. Here's an author called Carol Gray, and it's called The New Social Storybook, and it's all about developing those conversations. This helps students visualize the conversations and see others' perspectives. They create stories and little comic strips that illustrate the expected behaviors in various settings, teaching them how to act in the lunchroom, how to work on a group project together productively, teaching students how to take turns or raise a hand, or the basic appropriateness for schools, how to act appropriately while in school. So that's it. We have explored all the 5 key language processing domains and how they're deeply interconnected with the challenges many readers face. When even one of those domains is underdeveloped or disrupted, it can impact the reader's ability to decode, comprehend, and engage with text or reading. And so it's good to know this so we can start those interventions and those kids can feel successful that, hey, I'm getting better at reading, and we can see the growth. The whole key is knowing this so that we can see more student growth by reaching out to these children and doing the interventions that they need. Understanding these concepts and understanding this connection helps educators, parents, and even readers to become better readers. Because after all, that's what we want, is to have everyone be successful readers. Thanks. Thanks for your time. I enjoyed doing this once again, and looking forward to the next project.